I thought our 10th anniversary would be a night to remember. And it was, just not the way I expected. My husband smiled across the table, acting like everything was perfect. Then I saw her walk in, his ex. He said it was no big deal. But what he didn't know was that I had invited someone too. Someone who would change the entire night and expose every lie he ever told. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more true and untold stories, where pain turns into power, and truth always finds its way. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The smell of garlic butter filled my kitchen, and the sound of the knife tapping against the cutting board was the only thing breaking the silence. I was making dinner just like any other day, when Michael walked in with his phone pressed to his ear and that confident grin that used to make me feel safe. He ended his call and leaned against the counter. "Hey, babe," he said casually, sliding his phone into his pocket. "So, I've got an idea for our anniversary this weekend." I smiled without looking up. "Oh, what kind of idea?" He hesitated just for a second. "I thought we could have a nice dinner. Something small, intimate. Maybe invite a couple of friends too. You know, make it feel like a celebration." It sounded sweet, for about 3 seconds. Then he said something that froze me mid-movement. I was thinking of inviting Claire too. She's back in town. The knife almost slipped from my hand. Claire, his ex, the woman he dated for 3 years before me, the one he used to call the one that got away when he thought. I couldn't hear him talking to his friends. I slowly turned to face him. "You want to invite your ex to our anniversary dinner?" He laughed. That same nervous laugh he always gave when he knew he was pushing boundaries. "Oh, come on, Laura, don't make it weird. We're all adults here. She's married now, and we're just catching up." "It's not like that." I took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Sure, Michael, if that's what you want." He grinned, completely oblivious. "That's why I love you. You're so understanding." I watched him leave the kitchen, humming to himself, proud of what he probably thought was a mature decision. But as the door closed behind him, my fake smile disappeared. I looked down at the chopped vegetables and felt my chest tighten. He really thought I'd just sit there, smile and pretend everything was fine, while he brought his ex into our celebration of marriage. He had no idea what he'd just started. That moment, right there in my quiet kitchen, was when I made a decision. If he wanted Claire at our dinner, fine. But he wasn't the only one who'd be bringing a guest. The week leading up to our anniversary felt like a game. I was learning to play for the first time. Michael went about his days as if nothing was wrong. Chatting, texting, planning. I could tell whenever he was talking to her, because that fake casual tone slipped into his voice. Sometimes I'd hear him in the next room saying things like, "It'll be good to catch up. Laura's totally cool with it." He really believed that. He actually thought I was okay with it. So I decided to let him keep believing. I smiled when he mentioned her name. I nodded when he said he wanted to book a fancy restaurant downtown. But what he didn't know was that I'd already made my own reservation. At the same place, same time. I'd picked that restaurant deliberately. A rooftop spot overlooking the city, full of lights and whispers, the kind of place where truths came out, even when you tried to hide them. One evening, while Michael was pretending to work in his office, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. It had been years since I'd spoken to him, but some things are worth reopening. When he picked up, his voice was surprised but warm. "Laura, wow, it's been a long time." "Yeah," I said softly. "Listen, I need a favor, a small one, and it involves Michael." There was a long pause, then a quiet laugh. I had a feeling it would. We talked for almost an hour that night. By the time I hung up, everything was set. The next day, Michael was grinning like a teenager as he told me, "Claire said she's bringing her husband too. See? It's totally normal." "Of course," I said, smiling. "The more, the merrier." He didn't notice the way my voice lingered on that word. Merrier. I spent the next few days preparing. Not just my outfit or my makeup, but my mindset. I wasn't the same woman who used to cry quietly when he stayed out working late. I wasn't the one who begged for his attention. I had learned something powerful about silence. It gives you time to build your storm. The night before the dinner, I stood in front of the mirror in our bedroom, brushing my hair. I studied my reflection carefully. My eyes weren't soft anymore. They were steady, focused. I picked up my phone and made one last call. "Everything's ready," I said quietly. "Tomorrow night at 8, you'll know when to come in." The voice on the other end replied, "Got it. He won't see it coming." I ended the call, slipped my phone onto the dresser, and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, my husband would walk into that restaurant thinking he was in control, But by the time dessert was served, he'd learn what betrayal really feels like. I remember the way the sky looked that evening. Soft orange fading into deep purple, city lights blinking alive one by one. I took my time getting ready. A black dress, simple but elegant. The kind of dress that says I belong here, and I'm not to be underestimated. When Michael saw me walk down the stairs, his eyes widened. "Wow, you look amazing," he said, straightening his shirt collar. "Thank you," I replied, my tone calm and collected. He looked good too, in his navy suit and polished shoes. To anyone else, we'd look like a perfect couple. 10 years of marriage, celebrating love and commitment. But I knew the truth, and after tonight he would too. The restaurant was everything I'd imagined. Quiet music, candlelight reflecting off wine glasses, and a soft buzz of laughter from nearby tables. A hostess led us to a private booth near the glass railing, overlooking the city skyline. I could feel Michael's excitement. He kept glancing at his watch. "She said she's almost here," he muttered, looking toward the entrance. I stirred my drink and smiled faintly. "Can't wait." A few minutes later, I saw her. Claire. She looked almost exactly how I remembered. Blonde hair styled perfectly, an expensive dress, and that same smug smile that used to make my blood boil. She was holding the arm of a man I assumed was her husband. He looked polite, quiet, maybe a little nervous. They approached our table. Michael stood up quickly, almost too eagerly. "Claire, wow, you look great." She laughed softly. "You haven't changed a bit, Michael." I rose to my feet and extended a hand. "Hi, Claire. Nice to see you again." She gave me that fake smile that women give each other when they're sizing up the competition. "You too, Laura. You look wonderful." We sat down, exchanging small talk, pretending to be comfortable. The waiter brought drinks. The men talked about work, while Claire asked about our anniversary plans. At one point, she said, "It's so sweet you've made it 10 years. Not everyone does these days." Michael laughed. "Yeah, we've had our ups and downs, but we made it through." I looked at him and said quietly, "Yes, we sure did." They didn't catch the double meaning in my voice, but I knew my surprise guest would. He was already in the restaurant, waiting for my signal. As dinner went on, the conversation started to shift. Claire couldn't help but bring up their old memories. The way she smiled at Michael when she said, "Remember that road trip to Colorado?" made my stomach tighten. Michael laughed too hard. "Oh man, those were some crazy times." I could feel my jaw clenching. I forced a smile and took another sip of wine. The more they talked, the more invisible I felt. Like I was watching my husband slowly drift back into the past. A past where I didn't exist. Then Claire said something that made everything click. She turned to me and said, "You know, Michael told me you two met just a few months after we broke up. He was still calling me back then, trying to fix things." I looked at her, keeping my voice steady. "Is that so?" She smiled sweetly. "Oh, don't worry. We were both young and confused." Michael's face turned pale. "Claire, come on. That was ages ago." I set my wine glass down gently. "No, it's fine. I actually appreciate honesty." Inside, my pulse was racing. Every fake smile, every hidden text, every excuse he ever gave me suddenly made sense. But I stayed calm, because I knew what was coming. Just as the waiter cleared the plates, I checked my phone under the table and sent a short text. "You can come in now." A few minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, my surprise guest was walking toward our table. Confident, collected, and exactly on time. Michael's eyes widened when he saw who it was. His mouth fell open, but no words came out. Claire looked confused. "Who's that?" I smiled. "Oh, this is Adam, Michael's coworker. You might remember him." Adam pulled out a chair and sat down calmly. "Evening, everyone." Michael swallowed hard. "Laura, what is this?" I leaned back in my seat. "Relax. I thought it would be fun to invite someone too. You invited your ex, I invited your office buddy. But Adam wasn't just any coworker. He was the one Michael had been secretly bad-mouthing me to. The one who accidentally sent me screenshots of their office group chat. The one filled with Michael's jokes about me. And tonight, Adam had agreed to tell the truth. The table fell silent for a moment. Claire looked uncomfortable. Her husband shifted in his seat. Michael's hands were shaking as he tried to smile. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Adam folded his hands on the table. "I don't think there's any misunderstanding. Mike, Laura deserves to know what you've been saying about her for months." My husband's face turned red. "Adam, not here. This isn't the place." I turned to Adam, my tone steady. "Go ahead. I'd like to hear it. Adam nodded. Michael's been telling everyone at the office that you're boring, that he only stays with you because it's easier than starting over, that you don't make him feel like Claire did. Claire gasped softly. Her husband looked at her with confusion. Michael slammed his hand on the table. That's not true! But I'd already seen the screenshots, the group chat, the photos, the conversations he thought I'd never find. I took out my phone and laid it on the table. You mean these? Michael froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I looked at Claire and said quietly, he's been trying to reconnect with you behind my back too. Maybe your husband should see the messages. Her husband's expression hardened. Is that true, Claire? She stammered, I didn't reply to him like that. I just thought... He pushed back his chair and stood up. We're leaving. He walked out without another word. Claire followed, her face pale and trembling. The table was silent again. Only Michael and I remained, along with Adam, who quietly got up to leave. Before he walked away, he looked at me and said softly, You did the right thing. I nodded. Michael sat there staring at me, his voice cracking. Laura, why did you do this? You embarrassed me. I stood up slowly. No, Michael, you did that to yourself. I picked up my purse, leaned closer and whispered, Next time you invite your ex to dinner, make sure your wife isn't smarter than you. Then I turned and walked away. Outside, the city air felt cool against my face. For the first time in years, I felt light, free even. The restaurant lights shimmered behind me like distant stars, and I realized something simple but powerful. Revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it's just the moment you finally walk away with your dignity intact, leaving the liar to eat alone. I didn't look back as I walked out of the restaurant. The city air felt cold against my skin, but somehow I welcomed it. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe. I got into my car, started the engine, and sat there for a few moments before driving away. The lights of the city blurred through the windshield as my mind replayed the entire dinner. Every fake laugh, every nervous glance, every lie Michael had told me. It all came crashing together like a wave. I had finally decided to stop fighting. My phone buzzed. It was him. Michael, please come back. Let's talk. I stared at the message for a while, then turned off my phone and placed it face down on the passenger seat. The silence in the car felt heavy but peaceful. For years I had been afraid of silence because it meant facing my thoughts. But tonight, the silence meant freedom. When I got home, I walked straight to our bedroom. His clothes were still hanging neatly in the closet. His cologne still lingered in the air. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered every night I cried while he stayed out late. Every lie he told with a straight face. Every time he made me feel small so he could feel big. I opened my dresser drawer and pulled out the small notebook I had kept for years. Pages filled with things I wanted to say but never did. That night, I added one last sentence. He thought I was too quiet to fight back. But silence doesn't mean weakness. I closed the notebook, placed it in my suitcase, and began packing. The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains, cutting across the empty side of the bed where Michael used to sleep. My phone was full of missed calls and messages. We need to talk. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Please, Laura, just come home. But I was home. What he meant was that he wanted me to return to his version of home. The one built on lies and control. Around noon, I heard his car in the driveway. A few seconds later, the front door opened and slammed shut. Laura! He shouted from the hallway. We need to talk right now. I was in the kitchen, calmly pouring myself a cup of coffee. Good morning, Michael. He walked in, still wearing last night's wrinkled suit, eyes red from lack of sleep. How could you do that to me? He said, voice shaking. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I looked at him. You embarrassed yourself. All I did was show people who you really are. He rubbed his face. You think you're innocent? You planned all this. You set me up. I took a slow sip of my coffee. No, Michael. I gave you a chance to be honest. You chose not to be. He slammed his hand on the counter. I made one mistake years ago. You can't just destroy our marriage over that. One mistake? I said quietly. Michael, it wasn't just one. It was the constant lying. The way you talked about me behind my back. The messages you sent to your ex. And the fact that you thought I'd never find out. He stared at me, breathing hard, his confidence completely gone. Then his tone softened. Please, Laura, we can fix this. I'll change. I put the coffee cup down and looked him straight in the eyes. You've said that before, but the truth is, I don't want to fix this anymore. He blinked, like he didn't understand what I was saying. You're leaving me? Yes, I said simply. I already packed last night. He looked around, realizing some of my things were missing. Where will you go? I'm going to stay with my sister for a while, I said. After that, we'll see. He sat down, covering his face with his hands. I can't believe this. I watched him quietly. For the first time in years, I didn't feel scared or small. I just felt done. As I walked toward the door with my suitcase, he said softly, You'll regret this. I paused and looked back. No, Michael, you will. Then I walked out, closing the door behind me. 2 weeks later, I woke up in my sister's guest room to the sound of birds outside the window. It felt strange not waking up to Michael's voice or the smell of his coffee, but it also felt peaceful, like I was rediscovering what quiet happiness felt like. I spent those 2 weeks thinking about everything, not just what happened that night, but the years before it, the subtle ways. I'd been losing myself trying to keep him happy. My sister Emily was the kind of person who never judged. One morning while we were having breakfast, she said, You know, you look different, lighter. I smiled. I feel different. It's like I can finally breathe again. She nodded. You deserve better, Laura. You always did. I knew she was right. And I wasn't angry anymore. That surprised me the most. The anger had burned itself out, leaving only a strange calm in its place. That evening, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. I passed by a small coffee shop and decided to go in. While I waited in line, I noticed someone familiar sitting near the window. It was Adam, the man who had helped me that night. He looked up and smiled. Hey, stranger. I walked over, smiling back. Didn't expect to see you here. He chuckled. I could say the same. How are you holding up? Better than I thought I'd be, I said. Thank you for what you did that night. You didn't have to get involved. He shook his head. You deserved the truth. I couldn't just stay quiet. We talked for a while. He told me Michael had been avoiding everyone at work, embarrassed and angry. Apparently, Claire's husband had filed for separation too. It was strange how everything had unfolded, like dominoes falling exactly where they were meant to. Before I left, Adam said, You know, sometimes karma just needs a little push. You gave it one. I smiled at that. Maybe I did. When I walked back home, I realized something. The revenge hadn't been about payback. It had been about taking my power back. I had spent years waiting for Michael to value me. I finally understood that the only person who needed to was me. That night, I wrote in my notebook again. You can rebuild your life at any age, at any moment. You just have to stop waiting for someone else to give you permission. As I closed the notebook, I felt peace for the first time in a long time. And deep down, I knew my story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. It had been almost 3 months since that night. 3 months since I walked out of the restaurant, out of that house, and out of the version of myself that used to exist only to please him. Life had started to settle into something new. I'd found a small apartment downtown, closer to my job, and spent my evenings reading, cooking for myself, and sometimes just sitting in silence. That silence no longer scared me. It had become my peace. One Saturday morning, while I was watering the small plants on my balcony, my phone rang. When I saw the name on the screen, my chest tightened for a second. Michael. I hadn't heard from him since the day I left. He'd sent a few messages in the beginning, but I never replied. Something inside me told me not to. This time, though, I hesitated. Then I answered. Hello. There was a long pause. Then his voice came through, softer than I remembered. Hi, Laura. I stayed quiet, letting him continue. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, he said, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I leaned against the railing. Sorry for what, Michael? He sighed. For everything. For lying. For taking you for granted. I thought I was being clever that night, trying to prove how mature I was by inviting Claire. I didn't realize how stupid it looked until it all blew up. I said nothing. He continued, I've lost a lot since then. Claire's husband confronted me at work. My boss found out about everything that happened, and things have been bad. I had to move out for a while. I've been seeing a therapist. His voice cracked slightly. You didn't deserve what I did to you. And I'll never forgive myself for it. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. The part of me that used to rush in and fix things. But that part was gone now. Michael, I said calmly, I'm glad you're getting help. But you need to understand something. I didn't do what I did to hurt you. I did it because I was done being hurt. He was silent. I spent years waiting for you to value me, I said. That night wasn't about revenge. It was about reminding myself that I deserve better than being treated like an option. He sniffed quietly. I know, and I hope one day you can forgive me. I looked out at the city's skyline. I already have. But forgiveness doesn't mean we go back. It means I let go. He didn't respond for a while. Then quietly he said, "You really have changed." I smiled faintly. I had to. We said goodbye. And when the call ended, I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and freedom all at once. Sometimes closure doesn't come with fireworks. It just comes quietly, when you realize you don't need them anymore. A few weeks later, I was sitting in that same coffee shop where I'd run into Adam before. The air smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon. I was writing in my notebook again, something I did almost every morning now. I was no longer writing about pain or betrayal. This time it was about growth, about starting over. The bell above the door chimed, and when I looked up, I saw Adam walking in. He spotted me and smiled. "You always pick the best seat in the house." I laughed softly. "You caught me again." He ordered a coffee and joined me at the table. For a while we just talked. About work, about life, about moving on. It felt easy, natural, unforced. At one point he said, "You know, when I first met you, you looked like someone holding her breath, but now you look like someone who finally exhaled." I smiled at that. "That's exactly how it feels." He nodded. "You did something brave, Laura. Most people would have stayed." "Maybe," I said, but staying quiet was killing me slowly. Leaving was the only way to start living again. He raised his cup slightly. "To new beginnings?" I clinked mine against his. "To new beginnings." We talked for hours that day, laughing more than I had in a long time. When I left the coffee shop, I felt something shift inside me, a warmth I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't rushing into anything, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. That night, I wrote the final page in my notebook. You don't always get closure from the person who hurt you. Sometimes you create it yourself, one decision at a time. I placed the notebook on my nightstand and turned off the light. As I lay there, I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the dinner, the confrontation, the ending that had once seemed impossible. I wasn't the same woman anymore. I was stronger, wiser, and free. And as I drifted to sleep, one simple truth echoed in my mind. He invited his past to our dinner, but I walked out and met my future instead.